I think what's helped me stay fresh is the fact that I'm in an area of business that's just constantly changing. You look at the advent of AI as the most recent example, the pace of change is incredible. And so while you're still wearing the same hat in terms of the role and responsibility that you're playing, the landscape of opportunity is constantly shifting. And so that is just a great opportunity to continue to stay fresh and to learn about what's happening in the market.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Adventures of a Real Estate Broker with Daniel Berger. Thanks for being on the show and for listening in today. I'm excited. Someone that I've known for we're 3.5 decades, if not more. Mark Osborne. Mark Osborne and I were in college together, actually fraternity brothers. And I've watched his career soar over the years. And it's hard to get somebody that is not on social media, not on the grid, probably off fishing somewhere. But we got Mark today. I'm very appreciative. Mark Osborne with like 3 decades of business leadership, thought, insight, and wanted to have Mark on about talking about technology and about strategic thinking. So, Mark, thanks for being on the podcast this morning.
I'm honored to be here. Thank you.
Mark's Mark, when he's not drinking, is a very humble guy. Actually, he's always humble. Mark is a Minnesotan. I think you're born. I know you live there. I think you're born and raised in Minnesota.
Born and raised in Minnesota.
What we say is that's so awesome. But you definitely have that Midwest flair. People say about Mark, though, is that he is a rare blend of strategic thinking and analytical depth. I don't know how much you had to pay for that review, but that was a good one. And how about this? You're one of the most intelligent, talented individuals identifying and interpreting opportunities. Wow. That's pretty good, right?
How much you have to pay for that is $25 a month for OpenAI.
Okay. That's at least you knew where to look for it. So
Yeah.
that's really good. You were at SAP for many years, which is a global leader. What's interesting is, so you've been in the same industry for a long time. How do you stay like fresh and motivated and in a career that you've been doing for a long time? I have not been in the same career for a long time because they keep picking me out. And so after I did sales and marketing and beverage, I'm moving on. And so I'm only 9 years in real estate, but you have almost triple that. And so how do you stay fresh, engaged, and still excited about it?
Honestly, I don't view that as all that different from what you just described, right? You're a salesperson and you've always been a salesperson throughout your career. You just happen to have sold in different industries. And I look at it the same way in terms of my career. I've had different roles and different functions that have culminated in strategy and operations, but I've worn different hats in marketing and business analytics and variety of different areas of responsibility throughout my career. And I think what's helped me stay fresh is the fact that I'm in an area of business that's just constantly changing. You look at the advent of AI as the most recent example, the pace of change is incredible. And so while you're still wearing the same hat in terms of the role and responsibility that you're playing, the landscape of opportunity is constantly shifting. And so that is just a great opportunity to continue to stay fresh and to learn about what's happening in the market. One of the more interesting roles that I've held recently was focused on mentoring and advising startups when I was at SAP. We had a startup accelerator program that was a really innovative program where we were trying to identify startups that would bring innovation to the edge of our portfolio in areas that SAP wouldn't invest itself, but we knew that would provide a significant amount of value to our customers. And so for me, that was a great opportunity not only to see where new technologies were being applied in a way that SAP maybe wouldn't have applied it, but also see where the venture capital community was placing its bets and understanding where that technology investment was going to lead us in the future. So I think those are just a few examples of ways that I've had the opportunity both to be proactive about thinking about staying fresh, but also being forced to based on the pace of change.
I love that with new opportunities and new technology. Social media clearly is not one that we had in college. And I tell this story where one of our mutual friends, Sandy Glickman, who she actually runs a bus company in Pennsylvania. I got to have
I
her
didn't
on the
know
show too. Yes.
that.
So she's doing that. And actually, she's doing great things. But I remember I had a project in a computer class and I needed help. This is in 1987, before the crash. I was around that same time. And it was like a 1 credit computer class that was required. and there was an assignment that I needed help with. The assignment was to do probably the most basic math on a spreadsheet, on an Excel spreadsheet, attach it to an email and email the professor. And I
Wow.
was like, what do we do? I needed help. I needed help. And like now, like 4-year-olds, maybe 2-year-olds can actually do that step. And it was this thing like the internet wasn't a thing. You didn't have email. It seems like back to the day that you really enjoyed those things because it's amazing. It's funny to me, you being this techno guru and strategic thinking, and yet in the ways of social media, you're a Luddite in the sense, right? Like you just have maybe you think it's a fad and it's not going to, or you're just like, so the other issue is you know too much about TikTok, their social media that you're like, listen, it's probably a little helpful. They know too much about you and I'm just going to stay away. So it seems like that's more of you're scared by it a little bit. Are you scared by technology slightly?
Well, I guess I would be maybe a little jaded, I guess is the right way to put it. You know this about me. I'm an introvert, right? So that doesn't mean I'm antisocial. It just doesn't mean that it just means that I'm not like standing on a soapbox and shouting all the time, right? And so I've never really felt the need to be out on
Was there
Twitter.
a comma or a semicolon like you? Was that like, I can't,
Hey man, I don't judge. Everybody's got their thing. That's cool. But no, I've never really felt the need to do that. I mean, I'm out on LinkedIn, but I had a Facebook profile for a short period of time, but I learned that I could get all the updates from you, so I canceled that and just
so
been,
if it
you
wasn't
know,
for like a group text chat,
that's
you
right.
wouldn't really
Yeah.
know. But with that, the funny thing is, I'm less of an extrovert than people would think. And that might be shocking, but I'm probably more like you that if we went to a social, like a bar, right, that we didn't really know people, you and I would be in the corner. We're not dancing on tables. We're not trying to be like, so with people that I don't know, I'm probably more of an introvert. And with people that I do know, I'm not an introvert.
I think people think about introversion and extroversion as like a social engagement thing. And it's really more about energy, right? Where do you draw your energy from? A lot of people would draw a huge amount of energy from being able to walk into a social situation like you just described, where they don't know a lot of people and having met a bunch of people and having new conversations would say, boy, that was really energizing. That was super fun. But for someone like me, I like the example you just gave. Yeah, that would be really exhausting. And it's not to say I wouldn't enjoy it or I wouldn't enjoy meeting new people or having those conversations, but it would take a lot from me to be able to do that. And I think it's the same when you apply that in a technical context, not a person that's going to blow my own horn and try to do a lot of self-promotion. That takes a lot of energy for me to do that. So having the opportunity to come on forums like this and talk to people like you is really fun because I don't have to make a case.
The camera's on you. So it's
That's
not
right.
like you
Yeah,
don't have
that's
to
right.
ask
Yeah,
for attention.
I'm very sensitive about that, but we'll have to see how it goes.
I missed the boat on monetizing, and you probably should have been telling me this a long time ago, but I believe in our fraternity, I was an influencer, right? Or at least I probably was an influencer of not the things that I did, but the things that I described what was going on, more like a reporter, right? Like with my nickname, all my college people call me Gumper, and Gumper's gossip. And it was really, I think I was a trendsetter in TikTok and all those things of storytelling.
You were the original TMZ.
Exactly. And I didn't do anything with it, which is a
So,
little bit of a shame. And you can't change what's gone on in life. But
uh,
yes,
I think the good news is you still have a very loyal following. It might be small, but you got a very loyal following.
small but loyal.
Uh,
That's really the case. So what's interesting is with you being another question I have for you is with all of the technology that you've been able to look at and analyze and strategic think, is your investment portfolio, is it boring? And are you in blue chips or one question is, do you own any Bitcoin?
I do not own any Bitcoin.
Okay, so that's good. So I really don't either, except that my son and always wanted me to get in like Dogecoin and Bitcoin. I'm like, I am not. You can do that with your money, and I told him that, but he was too young, so he couldn't even set up an account to do it. So the only Bitcoin that I own would be like PayPal actually has an arm that if they're holding your money, you can actually invest extremely simply by clicking on a couple buttons you own. So I actually own some
Okay.
very like $1,000 that's up like 300%. So that's the way that my son and I have always gauged that area, because I didn't really want to allocate real money to it, but that was play money. That okay, so you don't have any of that. You're are you invested in the Nasdaq? Are you or are you so traditional? I know you own land because I know that you bought some acres in I think you said it was South Minnesota, if I
Southeastern
see.
Minnesota. That's right.
So
Yeah.
I see I I don't just talk, I listen because I got that. But like, where do you find that you've put your money, your for retirement and things like that? What types of areas?
As I've gotten older, I'm sure with you as well, I'm looking for a more diversified portfolio to mitigate risk. I used to have a lot of individual stocks and would try to invest in up and coming technology companies and made the mistake of selling that stuff way too soon. I was invested in Microsoft right after we graduated from college and made like $20,000,
I
which
mean, that was something,
yeah,
right?
when we were in our 20s, I thought I was a genius, but if I still had that, we'd be having a very different conversation right now. And my sister went to work for Amazon, I think probably 11, 12 years ago. So I bought some stock when she got that job. And I still own it and have done very well on that so far. And so we'll see where that goes. But I've really shifted the vast majority of my investments more to just an index fund portfolio, just to, again, mitigate that risk as we get closer to
Well,
retirement.
that's also so that the interesting thing about that is those index funds are going to be in everything. So
Yep.
you are invested. Like, I've certainly realized along that when you're younger, it's fun. It's like fantasy sports that oh, I'm going to pick this and I'm going to sell it. I just realized that I would never, maybe I might know when to buy something. I would never know when to sell anything
Yeah.
because that's like the smart people know that. And whether it's inside information or just it's gurus like you that are analyzing data and analyzing the markets or saying, you know what, we need to move. By the time a retail investor would know about that, it's too late. So I guess it's the same thing with real estate. People can buy and sell houses on their own without professionals. And I've actually moved my funds into professional management for the most part because what do I know about those things? I don't. And I'd rather pay someone a little bit of money to professionally manage and make sure that I also have a balanced portfolio because I
Yeah.
do
No,
think that's important. So as I've gotten older, though, now that I'm 9 years in real estate, my wife and I have decided to do more things in real estate. So we own like a townhouse. We also just bought a piece of a firehouse. We own 25% of a firehouse in Beacon, New York, with one of my clients.
oh,
As you
wow.
do business, I'm like, oh, this guy really knows what he's talking about, and he's able to take tax advantages. And there's incentives to invest in certain towns or in certain properties. And we actually bought a firehouse from the city of Beacon, and we are making an event space coffee bar, wine bar in the first floor that we already have a tenant already. And then we're going to do 4 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartments on the second and third floor.
Oh, that's so
So,
great.
yeah. So
That,
that's cool. And it's an up
yeah.
and coming, it's definitely the loop, right? So Beacon is really like the loop in St. Louis. It's very trendy.
Oh, Beacon's
Um,
great. Beacon's
yeah.
great. I
Oh,
think I
that's
told
right.
you
You said
my
your
sister, yeah,
sister, right?
my sister lives in
So
Beacon. Yeah.
that's and so as you get older and you're like, okay, what are we going to do? So that's something that I know, right? Real estate. I know how to rent the places. I know, and certainly do things that you know of and surround yourself, but with quality people is certainly something that's important. So
Absolutely.
we know that you're a conservative. So you're Mr. Conservative in many things. What's interesting is that I remember you saying things about that while you are thinking about your strategic thinking is obviously an art form and probably not one that I necessarily have, but you found a correlation between fly fishing and strategic thinking. So that's interesting to me. For me, not being a fly fisher is you put the clothes on, you're sitting in a river, and you're casting a lot. Although you're probably a one hand caster because the other hand's probably on a brew, um,
Not when, not
or
when,
scotch.
not when you're fishing. No, not when you're
Not when you're
fishing.
fishing. Okay, good. So now that not when you're fly fishing, because how about ice fishing?
When you're ice fishing, yes. Again,
Okay.
that's just
We'll get to that. We'll get to
okay.
what you think about when you're ice fishing. But in
Very good.
fly fishing, talk to me about like how that's you're alone and in solitude, and tell me the correlation between that and strategic thinking.
Maybe I'll just start with a quick analogy that maybe you can relate to a little bit, because I know you're a really passionate golfer, right? Both golf and fly fishing are what I would term aspirational sports, right? You can always get better, but you will never master it, right? There's no possibility that you will always step up to that tee box and hit a hole and run on every hole, right? So there's a craft to it that you constantly try to cultivate and use that as a means to improve. And I remember I've been fly fishing now since like I started right after we graduated from college. So it's been about 35 years that I've been doing this, and it's something that I really enjoy. It's something you can do, like you said, on your own, or you can fish with other people. You're not directly competing with them, but you're always a bit competitive, like in golf, right? You're keeping score a little bit, who caught the most fish or who caught the biggest fish. And early in my fly fishing career, I was working with a guide. I was fishing out west, and he's since become a good friend of mine. But he said if you cast the right way with the right fly, and you lay it down on the water in a way that looks natural to the fish, and you let that fly float in a way that looks natural to the fish, they will eat it. They will come and get it. So it's all about getting that combination correct. And there's all kinds of factors that come into play, right? You have to know, for example, how to read the water. Where's the right spot to cast to? You have to know which fly to pick, and that can vary depending on where you're fishing. It can vary depending on time of day. It can vary based on the season. You have to know how to cast into that water that you've identified as where you think the fish are most likely to be. And then you have to manage your line, because you've got this line that's now cast across the current, and the current is pulling the line in a certain way, and that's maybe affecting the way that the fish are seeing the fly. And so the correlation with strategy is all about those things, right? It's how do you interpret those factors that are going to put you in the best position to be able to succeed, no matter what your endeavor is, right? So if you're in marketing, for example, and you're trying to reach a certain audience, right? You need to find out where's that audience most likely to be. What is it that's most going to be most attractive to them? How do I present that in a way that's going to be the most meaningful to them and that they're going to really respond to in a positive way? And then once I get their attention, how do I capture that? How do I convert that into an actual conversation? And I think there's just a really basic set of questions that you can start to think about and ask that are consistent, regardless of what you're focused on. And so I've been thinking about that in the context of fly fishing, because I think a lot of times people would say it's all about the equipment. Not really. Or I'm going to go and I'm just going to cast it like a whole bunch of times and eventually something's going to come up. No, it doesn't work that way. And I think a lot of times in business, people will say, you've heard the saying, right? If you build it, they will come. And people, I'm going to come and I'm going to have this big message, and we're going to do a big like TV ad campaign and stuff like that. And that doesn't work necessarily. What you need to do is really think about who's the audience that I'm trying to reach, what are they going to value, how do I present that to them in a way that's meaningful, and then how do I convert that interest once I get it.
I think it's also important though to put yourself in the position of the person that you're trying to market to. And I don't think you did that enough with the fish, because really you didn't say anything about going in the water, looking up to see what it looks like, so that to see when your cast is, oh, if I was a fish, this is the one that I would go to. That's the only thing you
Well,
never put
yeah.
yourself in the fish's position.
No, you probably wouldn't want to do that, particularly if you're standing in a stream with a strong current in really cold water. But you typically will know where they tend to be.
Okay, that's the only thing I think was missing. Otherwise, I'm all in on
Very
the
good.
analogy.
Very good.
Talk to me a little bit about how you felt lifelong friendships, lifelong relationships, and how you feel that makes you either a better strategic thinker or a technology guru, or and how do you leverage those things in things that you're thinking about?
it, I feel really blessed to have the friends that I have and the background and experience that I've had. You mentioned that you and I went to college together. We were fraternity brothers. You just think about that group, right? We have friends that are all over this country. We have friends that sometimes have lived overseas, right? There's a lot of places that we can go where you can pick up the phone and say, "Hey, I'm traveling to where you are. Let's get together." And in our case, we're really lucky to have a group of friends where I haven't seen you in 5 years, but it's like we saw each other yesterday. We just pick up right where we left off, and it's great fun. And we've all watched each other go through the cycles of life with families and kids and bar mitzvahs and all kinds of great things, right? I think that's been a really important aspect of my perspective in the sense that you have this built-in confidence that you've got this group of friends that have your back, that will be there to support you, and that are in all these different places. And I've, again, been blessed with that in my professional career as well. Having worked for a global company, I now have friends all over the world. And it's just really great to be able to not only have that confidence and that perspective, but also to just appreciate the different backgrounds and the different expertise that all these different people have, right? So I now know after you've lectured me many times that I ever have any question on any real estate issue anywhere in the world at any time that you're the guy to call.
That is
It's
so
not,
that's true.
yeah, it's
And
not just the greater New York metropolitan
right.
area.
But again, shame on me for not catching my fly
There you go. Right.
far
See?
enough to explain, because while the joke about it would be that I do like to get in my sandbox, I don't. Because if I did, you would have known that,
That's right.
and we would have been involved. But so that's true. The other interest, so you've also been on global teams and had to deal with getting work done with international people. And what's interesting to me, if you could talk about, so it's not just that people are from different cultures, which is clearly, you're always going to be better to talk to people from different than you because you learn a lot. But you also, besides just having different cultures, you also had different norms and rules and regulations, because clearly some of your European work, there are different people have different hours and different schedules than our country. So how is that for you? And do you have a story about things that have happened when you were abroad trying to get stuff done and you're like, oh, it's 3 o'clock, they're taking a nap now, it's siesta time, or oh, you can't contact someone after 5 o'clock. So do you have any
Yeah.
stories like that?
Oh, lots. The time zone thing is probably the biggest, right? The last job I had at SAP, I was managing a global team of, I think, about 16 people. And I had folks all over the world. We had somebody based in Singapore. We had somebody based in India. We had folks in Europe and the US. So just trying to find a time on a monthly basis where we could have a global team meeting was extremely challenging because it was like 7 a.m., in Minnesota and 11 p.m. in Singapore. Doing that was really challenging. But I think that the cultural norms that you mentioned, I'll give you one really funny story that's related to work. It isn't directly a work story, but I was on a business trip in Germany. And the Germans and the Dutch, and they're phenomenal to work with. They're just great people, but they can be very direct. And I think that they also have a very different sense of how you would interpret one's responsibility with respect to a certain task or just a certain set of circumstances. So I was on this business trip. I was in Germany and I got stuck at the office. So I was a little bit delayed getting to the hotel where I'd made the reservation. So I got in my rental car, drove from the office, got to the hotel, parked the car, walked into the lobby, and I said, yes, I'm checking in. Last name is Osborne, and here's my passport. And this young woman is sitting behind the desk, and she keys in the information, and she says, oh, one moment, please, and walks away. And a few minutes later, another young woman comes up, and she's even younger than the one I had. I mean, she looked like she was about 16 years old. And she says, oh, Mr. Osborne, I'm very sorry. Your reservation was guaranteed until 6 p.m. And she points to this clock on the wall over her head. And she says, it's after 6. It was about 5 minutes after 6 p.m. And I said, yeah, I realize that. I'm very sorry. I got stuck at the office and I just am a few minutes late. And she said, again, I'm sorry. Your reservation was guaranteed until 6. And as you can see, it's after 6. And I said, do you mean to tell me that the hotel is not only fully booked, but some random person happened to walk in off the street between 6 and 6:05 and asked if you had the one remaining room that was available? And you said, as a matter of fact, yes, we do. And she said, Mr. Osborne, as you can see, it's after 6. And so I'm standing there and I'm getting more and more frustrated. And I said, what am I now supposed to do? And she said, she pulled out this piece of paper because apparently this happens all the time. And she said, here's a list of local hotels with all their phone numbers. You can call and see if you can get a room somewhere else. So luckily, having worked for a large global company, they had a travel agency that was affiliated with the company. So I was able to call them.
They did. So they
Yeah.
actually gave your room away, or they
Yeah,
were
well,
they?
she wouldn't give any information. So
So
what
that's what you should have said. Okay, thank you for not having that. I'd now like to check in random. I'm like, if I just
Oh
walked
yeah,
in
that's a
over
good
the
idea.
street,
I
why
never
not?
thought about that.
Okay, that
So
is
so
fair. That I didn't follow the rules,
yeah.
and then you walk out of the hotel, walk in and say, I'd like to rent a
Yeah,
room
do you
with
have
you,
any
you
rooms
know.
available? But
Exactly.
the funny thing is that when I've told that story to like my American friends, everyone's, oh, that's ridiculous. That's just crazy. How could that happen? That's terrible, right? I tell that story to my German colleagues and they say, what are you talking about? That's clearly your fault.
But those are two different things. Your fault and why wasn't there a room ready? Like
Right,
you were
right.
late.
I think the moral here is that they wouldn't have even questioned that she was doing the right thing. So it's not even a
She
matter
was
of
following her
it's
right.
yeah, it's
She
not a
was
matter of
following the rules.
it's not a matter of availability. It's right. It's after 6. That's right. Exactly. So just some really valuable lessons about how people view things and what they see as areas of responsibility and accountability and that kind of thing.
That's funny. So it's interesting. So in the whole tech, and I would say many industries obviously have huge changes. Real estate's clearly one of them. Think about back in the day when our parents were looking for houses, you would have your agent probably only did the town that you were in, right?
Mhm.
Probably didn't do multiple towns. You would have driven to a storefront, right? You would have gone to an actual location
That's
in the
right.
mall or a
Yep.
strip mall, or maybe it was it was or a commercial house or something that you would go in and you would sit and you would meet with people, and keys would be right. Actual keys would be in the office, and then you would have to take that key, go to see. You probably take the two or three keys that you're showing houses to, go out. I don't know if they even had multiple keys. There was just like nobody else can see the house because there's an agent that has the key, and then
Right.
you'd have to return the key back in an office. That would have been one thing, right? You didn't have the internet. So clearly, a buyer wouldn't know what how you barely would know what houses were on the market. I guess it was in the newspaper, right? So that would be the only way was that you, but again, the
Or you
newspaper
happen to have
prints.
a relationship with a realtor, like someone you met through your church or your work or socially, whatever,
I mean,
right?
that person, if anything, that person was a gatekeeper, right? And you relied on them. And so whatever their fee was, it was the fee, and you couldn't really do anything. Now with the internet, it's like a partnership that I have with my clients because everybody can see everything. So it's
Right.
not, oh, I found this for you. No, you didn't. Generally, I don't find things for people. Maybe sometimes, but rarely. It's tell me, here's a house, let me know the address and what it is, and then I'll find more information out about it. And then that's how it's teamwork. So that's something that's changed. Obviously, the lock boxes are changed with technology. There used to just be like combo code lockbox, but I could give you the code. You could go without me. And they're still used today. And I think they're the most ridiculous things. I would never do that because you want to use the electric lockbox that knows when someone's opened it, when they closed it, who's doing it. And you can't really give that out. I can because I can give I can also give someone a timed code that
Mhm.
is only good for an hour. And then
Yep.
after that, so that's really different. But there's every day my phone rings so many times. I'm getting phone calls from this tech company, that tech company. Everybody wants to sell me something. And it's almost like overwhelming
Mhm.
where, that's where I take my Mark Osborne approach and I just say no to everything. And like even my company has rolled out CRM platforms, other back end things. And you know what I do? I don't take them because I've learned over the 9 years, I don't take it, and then 6 months or a year later, it didn't take, and they're moving to something else. You'd love how I run my back end because you've always been a back end guy. My back is nothing. I have, I don't, I have no like office staff, right? I put deal transacts. I go into the computer and I log it, right? I'm not using AI. I'm not using somebody in a foreign land paid like $6 an hour to be a coordinator. Like I do it because it's not that difficult to do.
Well,
And I also want to be involved in what's going on, right? Like
we're back to the fly fishing example, right? If
I
you got 15 people standing all at the same spot on the edge of the stream, all casting to the fish is going to be like, hey, come on. Like, I can see you, right? You're going to stop wasting my time. So they're presenting you with all these tools, and it's not that you're looking at it and saying, I don't need CRM at all. You're saying, this is just going to change. This isn't valuable enough to me. I can be just as effective doing it the way I've been doing it. So they haven't presented you with the right fly. That's it.
And I also feel my view in a lot of bringing on technology is let's see what happens with it.
Yep.
Like, I don't necessarily need to be the first generation user for anything for the most part. Like, even think about the iPhone. You're probably a Droid guy, though.
So I can see where you're going with this. There's a very famous book called Crossing the Chasm by this guy named Jeffrey Moore. And this is now probably 30 years old. And what he talks about exactly what you're describing, there's this bell curve and there's stages of technology adoption. And at the very front end of the bell curve, you've got these early adopters. And then in the middle, you've got the market majority. That's where the vast majority of the people are in the market. But there's a gap between those early adopters and the rest, or the late majority, they call it. And the gap is that the early adopters think about technology in a completely different way than the late majority thinks about it. They look at it, and you mentioned like the iPhone and that kind of thing. When that first came out, you think about it, they had one cellular carrier, AT&T. The coverage was awful. The limitations on the apps that were available and that kind of thing, it weren't nearly what it is today. But you had this passionate group of early adopters who wanted it because it was new. They were willing to make those compromises and take those risks and do those things because they valued the innovation in and of itself. And Apple needed to get that early market maturity and be able to build that foundation before people like you and me would come and say, okay, it's proven enough, it's established enough, there's a carrier that has the coverage that I want, now you've expanded your options, okay, now I'll take it. But you couldn't do that with that early model. You needed to rely on a different segment of the market that would value that innovation for the sake of innovation. Tesla, the same way, right? Tesla comes out with these cars. There's almost no charging stations. When they first came out, there's no big network. The range was limited, but people looked at that and said, that's the future. That's amazing. I want one of those. And so they were able to sell that, and they've had this incredible valuation relative to Ford and Chrysler and all the traditional car companies because they've been able to innovate.
Well, it's valued as that's actually valued as a tech company, right? More than it
Right,
is a car
right,
company. But
right, exactly. But the same idea holds true, right? You're going after a certain segment of the market that maybe thinks differently than where the bigger market ultimately is. But you have to be able to identify those folks to be able to say, these are the people that are going to value that innovation for the sake of innovation, even though it's limited.
and even now, like with the when the new phones come out, maybe more so a couple of years ago that you wouldn't I wouldn't personally want it right away because I want their flaws and bugs. If
Right.
you get the first one, and so you let it play out. Apple's done a very good job of fixing their bugs faster, but yet you see things are like, oh, I want to know what those that stage one people, the cameras, oh, it's so much better. Oh, it's not that much better. So it's not like jumping on it right away. So it is something, but so I always get this technology, and I figured for the most part, for me, I keep moving my business more. I'm lucky that every year it's bigger and bigger, and I don't necessarily need to do that. But every day there's, oh, we have this, we have that. And then, of course, there are companies that not necessarily, you were working with them in SAP, right? Up and coming companies, and they don't all work. And
Yeah.
that's the whole reason why SAP didn't invest in them because they said it is much smarter for us to partner with 100 companies than to invest in five. We'd rather have a little piece of 100 than own five because
Yeah.
most companies aren't going to make it or they get bought out and things like that. So
Yeah.
it's
I also think you have to think about how you differentiate yourself as well, too, right? And that this applies in a technology context, but it probably applies to you. You're not differentiating on the basis of the technical solutions that you're using to cast a wider net or to reach the market.
what's interesting is I hear this all the time that real estate people are like, why my company or why this company? Or when they try to recruit me and they're like, everyone says this, our technology is better. And the bigger players are saying that. And I'm like, there's no difference.
Well, no,
Like,
I would say you differentiate on the basis of the relationships that you build.
for people the real estate companies that are going out and buying companies are like, we have better technology. We're going to
Yeah.
find the buyers. That's what they say. But in the end of the day, it's people. And so that's actually
Yeah.
why there's a lot of people that use AI and virtual assistants. And I'm thinking like, why do I want a virtual assistant who may speak English great, but probably doesn't? Well, I guess clearly I have clients that speak all different languages. And so clearly if they could speak their language, which I might not be able to, that would be a beneficial, right? If I had all Russian people and I don't speak Russian, it might be good for me to have a Russian assistant. So that's different. But let's just talk in general. They're contacting clients and moving things along. And I'm like, that's the most ridiculous thing. Or even like when a lead's coming in, when there's this text conversation with AI asking about where they're looking, what they're pricing, and it's all computer generated. It's
Yeah.
I'm thinking like it's not like I have to deal with 5,000 clients at a time. It's 5 to 20. So if it's 5 to 20 and it's onboarding a couple of days, I felt that it should be me doing it, not a computer.
Yeah, I mean, you're dealing in residential real estate, right? And what's more personal than your home? So why would you want to have a completely impersonal AI generated experience when you're going through one of the biggest investments that you'll probably ever make and into something that is going to be the place where you're going to house yourself and your family? So I think it's important to really focus on that relationship in the way that you've just described.
I mean, other companies like think about like car rental companies, right? Where you can't even speak to a person
That's
anymore.
right.
It's
That's right.
all done through AI. And guess what? Clients are frustrated with that, right?
Oh yeah.
Sometimes it works, sometimes it's not. I guess 5 years from now, 10 years, maybe 5 years from now, you won't. So the companies are relying on at some point that computer is going to answer questions better than the person would because it's going to have it could go through the manual. It knows every single course of action and from learning the situation maybe, but people's things are going to change. And so you don't know. But that's also a little bit of a different interaction than, like you said, in real estate. People are trying to bring that in, but it just seems to me like it's still a sit and wait. And it seems like people still want to talk to real people at
Oh,
this point.
absolutely, they do. Yeah. No, this is happening right now, right? Amazon just laid off 30,000 people. And that wasn't just a split decision. That's been years in the making, where they've been making these investments in AI and robotics to be able to replace all of these human roles.
I heard though, so it's interesting. So a couple things about that. One with Amazon, we have my mom when my daughter I don't know if it was my daughter was like 3 years old. We're recording my mom interacting with my daughter. And we have on tape my mom saying that Amazon's never going to make it. Because at that point, it was only doing books, I think, right?
Yep, that's right.
It's like they're losing, they're never going to make it. And we play that back. My mom was 84 and it annoys her that we still have that. But we do have that. My mom said that.
Yeah.
But and so the other thing though is that's what you were just talking about with Amazon. I thought some of that was also chip related, where so Amazon's not just the delivery, they're also the AWS, which is right. So that's actually more profitable for them. That is where they're making 30+%. Delivery packages is a low margined item, right?
Yeah, it is a fallacy to think of Amazon as a retailer. Amazon is a holding company, right? They're an
They're
extremely
also
diverse business.
and they're also that's where you get to watch the Minnesota Vikings on Thursday nights.
That's right, Amazon Prime. That's right,
Exactly,
exactly.
and Whole Foods. So
Yeah,
it's really a conglomerate,
yeah,
actually.
yeah.
But I don't know if the layout. I don't know if it was as much in the delivery service as it was. They were probably also building out, thinking that their AWS was going to be there, but they're having problems getting the chips because obviously there's a
Yeah.
chip shortage.
Compute power with AI is the big choke point, right? And the amount of energy that's required to fuel that is also the big challenge these days.
So
But
my young liberal son, we love him obviously, but anytime I'll send him anything remote that looks like it's AI, he like bashes me. He's Dad, that's AI, and you just used a lot of energy to send that. So, which is actually, I actually think, and so I'm like, oh, that guy. But I do think that those are important things, right? Because as we know that energy is an important thing to make the world go around, we have to protect the environment and protect the energy because, like you said, AI is using so much more energy than we ever thought of. And so that's a whole other thing that SAP smart people would be thinking about and
I
telling
just
us what we're supposed to do.
I just saw an article that said that they're looking at putting data centers in space. So using the unlimited power of the sun to generate the power it needs, and then because it's infinitely cold in space, you don't need water or any other artificial cooling to be able to keep it cool. So you can just transmit the data back and forth via the cloud, and so maybe
Literally the
those
cloud.
kinds of things. Yeah, literally the cloud. Exactly.
See, that was a nice little tidbit. So now I'm going to have a talking point about how we can do that. But that was You know what, Mark? When we talked about getting you on, and you're like, I'm an introvert, I'm boring, we're gonna have nothing to talk about. It seems as though we filled up about 40 something minutes of talking about nothing.
It's always easy to talk to you, Danny. Always.
Well, so I want to thank you for, we don't know, we did talk a little bit about real estate, but in the end of the day, real estate's about people, it's about technology, it's about integrating different cultures. And so I knew we would find our way. And hopefully when you send the podcast to your friends and family, they actually make it through the end and don't fall asleep. Or or you can tell people that if you're out of melatonin, watch the episode with Danny and
There you
I,
go. There you
and
go.
you'll be asleep before the end of it. I am not asleep. I am thankful that you're able to come on. It's always good seeing you, talking to you, and I need to talk more. I need to do more listening because you have a lot to share, and I want to thank you for your expertise and in coming on the show this week.
You do a great job with these podcasts, Danny, and I appreciate the opportunity. And it's really not about promoting myself or sharing this with friends and family. It's really about having the opportunity to see you and have a conversation with you.
And to tell people that Dr. Abe Kaplan was not the only fraternity brother that
There you
made it to the
go.
podcast.
Exactly.
That
Yeah.
Minnesota's in the house.
And we've already seen other guys that are now like, hey, what do I need to do? I want to be on the
what do I
show,
need to
right?
do? I said, one is you need to get the book, The
There you
Adventures of a
go.
Real Estate Broker. You did that. Then you need to ask, and you did that as well.
Yep.
And then obviously it's great. So thank you, Mark, for coming on. For everyone, it's Daniel Berger with The Adventures of a Real Estate Broker. Thank you for listening in. And until next time, thank you very much. If today's stories opened your eyes, wait till you see what's next. Hit the video on screen to join the next adventure with Daniel Berger.